The metal floor was cold against Captain Hyunwoo Kim's face as he lay in his cell. The Vorthak prison ship moved through space, carrying hundreds of human slaves to their new work assignments. Hyunwoo had been a military officer on Earth before the aliens came. Now he was just another piece of property. The Vorthak were giants. They stood 12 feet tall with thick gray skin that looked like armor. Their eyes glowed red in the dark, and they could speak directly into your mind without moving their mouths. Every species in the galaxy feared them. For 3,000 years they had ruled everything. Hyunwoo remembered the day they arrived at Earth. Ambassador Da-un Choi had tried to talk to them. She was brave and smart, speaking for all humans. She offered friendship and trade. The Vorthak leader had listened quietly, then grabbed her head with one massive hand. Da-yun screamed as her mind was torn apart. She died right there on live television while the world watched. Omega class, the Vorthak had declared. Lowest rank. No value except as workers. The galaxy had a system. The Vorthak were Alpha, the top rulers. Below them were other strong species like the war-loving Kraxi and the tech-smart Zilani. Each species had a rank based on how well they could fight and how much they could resist Vorthak mind control. Humans got the worst rank possible. The cell door opened with a loud clang. A Vorthak guard stepped inside. His mind voice echoed in Hyunwoo's head. Move, slave. Work time. Hyunwoo stood slowly. His body hurt from sleeping on metal, but he had learned not to complain. Complaining meant pain. The Vorthak could hurt you just by thinking about it. Their minds were like weapons. The guard led him through narrow hallways filled with the smell of fear and sweat. Other humans shuffled along, their eyes empty. Some had been slaves for years. They had forgotten what freedom felt like. They entered a large work area where humans sorted through piles of alien technology. The Vorthak used human hands to handle delicate work, but they never explained what anything did. Humans were tools, not people who needed to understand. Hyunwoo sat at his station next to a young woman named So-young Park. She had been a doctor on Earth, but here she was, just another worker. They were not allowed to talk, but sometimes they exchanged quick looks. In her eyes, Hyunwoo saw something different. While other humans looked broken, So-young looked angry. The work was boring and hard. They took apart alien machines and sorted the pieces by color and size. Guards watched them constantly. Any mistake brought punishment. The Vorthak enjoyed causing pain. They said it helped humans remember their place. During the meal break, Hyunwoo sat alone with his bowl of gray food. It tasted like nothing and barely gave enough energy to work. He thought about Earth, about the blue sky and green trees. Here everything was metal and darkness. A guard grabbed a human worker named Tae-ho and threw him to the ground. The man had been too slow with his sorting. The guard's eyes glowed brighter as he pushed pain directly into Tae-ho's mind. The human screamed and shook on the floor while others watched in silence. Remember your place, the guard said to everyone. You exist to serve. Nothing more. That night, back in his cell, Hyunwoo stared at the ceiling. 15 years had passed since the Vorthak came to Earth. 15 years of slavery and suffering. Most humans had given up hope. The Vorthak were too strong, too smart, too powerful. But something was happening. Hyunwoo had started to notice small things, machines that broke down at strange times, guards who seemed confused about their orders. Little problems that the Vorthak blamed on human stupidity. 3 days later, So-young was taken away. Guards said she was being moved to a research facility. Hyunwoo never expected to see her again. Humans who went to research facilities usually died there. But a week later, something impossible happened. Hidden in his food bowl, Hyunwoo found a tiny piece of metal with words scratched into it. The message was short, but it made his heart race. They don't understand what we really are. As Hyunwoo looked around the dining area, no guards were watching. He quickly put the metal piece in his mouth and swallowed it. The message was from So-young. Somehow she was still alive, and somehow she had found a way to send him hope. That night, Hyunwoo lay on his cold floor and thought about the message. What did it mean? The Vorthak had studied humans for 15 years. They knew how weak human bodies were, how easily human minds could be hurt. They knew humans had no special powers, no advanced technology, no psychic abilities. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the Vorthak understood human weakness but not human strength. Maybe they saw what humans couldn't do but missed what humans could do. The next morning brought more work, more pain, more guards shouting orders. But something had changed inside Hyunwoo. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. So Young was alive. She had discovered something important, and she believed humans were more than the Vorthak realized. Other humans in the work area still looked broken and empty, but Hyunwoo started watching them more carefully. Sometimes, when guards weren't looking, he saw quick glances between workers, small nods, tiny gestures that could mean nothing or could mean everything. A human named Ji-ho was sorting circuits at a nearby station. He was older, maybe 40, with scars on his hands from years of work. When the guards moved to the other side of the room, Ji-ho caught Hyunwoo's eye and made a tiny movement with his finger. It looked like he was drawing a letter in the air. The letter R, maybe, or P, or maybe it meant something else entirely. The Vorthak had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered 47 different species. They had never lost a war or failed to break a rebellion. They called themselves Alpha because no one had ever proved them wrong. But, as Hyunwoo returned to his sorting, he wondered if the Vorthak had made their first real mistake. They had judged humans by their bodies and their technology. They had put humans in the lowest rank and forgotten about them. Maybe that was exactly what humans needed. Maybe being underestimated was not a weakness, but a weapon. The work continued. The guards watched. The Vorthak Empire remained strong and terrible, but deep in the darkness of slave ships and prison cells, something new was growing, something the Alpha species had never seen before, something human. Dr. So-Young Park pressed her eye to the microscope and smiled for the first time in months. The Vorthak research facility was a place of pain and death, but it was also giving her answers. Important answers that could change everything. The lab was huge and white, filled with machines that hummed and blinked. Vorthak scientists used human prisoners to test new weapons and study alien biology. Most humans died quickly, but So-Young was useful because she understood medicine, so they kept her alive to help with their experiments. What the Vorthak didn't know was that So-Young was learning too. She had been studying brain scans from different species for weeks. The Vorthak wanted to understand how their mind control worked on different aliens, but So-Young saw something else in the data, something the Vorthak had missed completely. Human brains were different, not weaker, different. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved in one direction. The Kraxi became perfect warriors. The Zilani became master builders. The Henth became great traders. Each species was very good at one thing but limited in other areas. Humans were not perfect at anything, but they were decent at everything. While other species had specialized brains, human brains stayed flexible. They could adapt and learn and change in ways that other species couldn't. The Vorthak saw this as weakness because humans had no clear advantages. But So-Young realized it was actually a hidden strength. The Vorthak mind control worked by attacking the fixed patterns in other species' brains. When they tried to control humans, it was like trying to grab water. Human minds would bend and shift and find new paths around the control. So-Young had to be very careful. The Vorthak watched everything she did, but she began leaving tiny messages in places they wouldn't look. A few words scratched into the bottom of equipment. Small marks on test samples. She needed other humans to know what she had learned. 3 levels below the lab, in the facility's engineering section, a young man named Tae-min Yoon was having his own discoveries. Tae-min had been an inventor on Earth before the Vorthak came. Now he fixed their machines when they broke. The work was supposed to be simple. Replace broken parts, clean dust from circuits, check power connections. But Tae-min couldn't help studying how the alien technology worked. His human brain wanted to understand everything. Vorthak machines were very advanced but also very specialized. Each device did exactly one job and did it perfectly. The aliens never seemed to think about using their technology in new ways. When something broke, They just replaced it with an identical copy. But Taemin's flexible human mind saw possibilities everywhere. He started making small changes to the machines he repaired. Nothing obvious, just tiny improvements that made them work a little better. When the Vorthak noticed, they assumed the machines were just running properly again. One day, while fixing a communication device, Taemin realized he could combine parts from different machines to create something completely new. The Vorthak would never think to do this because they saw each technology as separate and unchangeable. That night, in the dark corner of his repair shop, Taemin built his first hybrid device. It was small and looked like a normal maintenance tool, but it could actually disrupt Vorthak electronics in subtle ways that would look like random failures. In another part of the galaxy, on a prison moon covered in gray rock and metal buildings, Colonel Yoonji Han was discovering that humans weren't as alone as they seemed. Yoonji had been a soldier on Earth. Here, she was supposed to be just another prisoner doing heavy labor, but she had managed to become a group leader, organizing work details and solving problems for the guards. The Vorthak liked having humans who could control other humans. What they didn't realize was that Yoonji was using her position to build something much more dangerous than a work crew. The prison moon held more than just humans. There were also members of other low-ranked species that the Vorthak considered barely worth watching. Small, quiet aliens who did simple jobs and never caused trouble. But when Yoonji started talking to these aliens, she learned something interesting. Many of them were much smarter than they pretended to be. They acted weak and stupid because it was safer. The Vorthak ignored species they thought were harmless. An old alien named Kef from the furry Kethran species became Yoonji's secret ally. The Kethran looked like small bears and were supposed to be too primitive for complex thinking. But Kef spoke perfect human language and had been watching the Vorthak for decades. "We have been waiting," Kef told her during a private moment in the mines, "waiting for someone who could challenge the tall ones. Your people think differently than others." "How do you know about human thinking?" Yoonji asked. "We study all species. Human minds work like no others we have seen. You can learn, adapt, change. This makes you dangerous to those who rule through fear." Kef and his people began sharing information with Yoonji. They had maps of Vorthak facilities, knowledge of guard schedules and communication networks that the rulers knew nothing about. The primitive species had been preparing for rebellion for generations. Back on the slave ship where Captain Hyunwoo Kim still sorted alien parts, changes were happening too. The tiny message from So Young had started something. Humans who had seemed broken and hopeless were beginning to make eye contact again. An information broker named Young Soo Nam worked in the ship's data center, organizing files for Vorthak administrators. His job gave him access to transportation schedules, prisoner transfers, and facility locations across multiple worlds. Young Soo had been quietly mapping the entire slave network for years. He knew which ships went where, which facilities held which prisoners, and how the whole system worked. He had been waiting for the right moment to use this knowledge. When he heard about So Young's message through whispered conversations, Young Soo knew the moment had come. He began sending coded information to humans on other ships and facilities. Lists of names and locations hidden in routine data transfers. Ship schedules disguised as supply inventories. The Vorthak communication system was very secure, but it was designed to stop other advanced species from breaking it. They never considered that primitive humans might find completely different ways to send secret messages. In the work area, Hyunwoo noticed that more humans were making those tiny gestures he had seen before. A touch of the nose that meant message, received. A scratch of the ear that meant understood. A tap on the work surface that meant ready. The old human named Jiho turned out to be much more than just another broken slave. During a brief moment when guards were distracted, he whispered to Hyunwoo, 15 years of planning. We've been waiting and learning and preparing. The time is almost here." "Preparing for what?" Hyunwoo whispered back. "To show them what happens when you underestimate humans." That night, as Hyunwoo lay on his cold floor, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope was growing stronger. All across the galaxy, humans were discovering their hidden strengths. They were building networks, creating weapons, and making allies. The Vorthak still saw humans as the weakest, most pathetic species in their empire. They had no idea that their Omega-class slaves were becoming something they had never faced before. Something that could think in ways they couldn't understand. Something that could adapt to any situation, something that could turn their own technology against them. The alpha species was about to learn what happened when you gave the most flexible minds in the galaxy 15 years to study your weaknesses, and humans had been very good students. Dr. Sung-Ho Jang stared at the energy readings on his stolen scanner and couldn't believe what he was seeing. For months, he had been secretly studying Vorthak power systems while pretending to do maintenance work. What he discovered would change everything. Sung-Ho was a physicist who had been captured during Earth's final battle. The Vorthak thought he was just another technician fixing their machines. They had no idea he was actually learning how their most advanced technology worked. Vorthak energy weapons and shields used something called psychic resonance. Their minds could directly control the flow of power through special crystals. This made their technology incredibly powerful, but also created a weakness they never knew existed. Human brain patterns were different enough that they could actually disrupt the psychic connections. When a human touched the right spot on a Vorthak device while thinking in the right way, the technology would malfunction. Sung-Ho had tested this theory on small devices in his workshop. A touch here, a focused thought there, and Vorthak machines would suddenly stop working. The aliens always blamed mechanical failures and replaced the broken parts. They never suspected sabotage from a primitive human mind. But Sung-Ho wanted to test something bigger. That night, he snuck into the facility's main power center. The huge energy core hummed with enough power to run the entire complex. If his theory was right, he could cause a complete system failure that would look like a random accident. He placed his hands on the control panel and focused his thoughts the way he had practiced. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights began to flicker. Warning sounds started blipping from various machines. The core's humming changed pitch. 10 minutes later, the entire facility went dark. Emergency power kicked in after an hour, but the damage was done. Hundreds of important experiments were ruined. Security systems failed. Communication networks crashed. The Vorthak blamed a rare technical malfunction and spent weeks trying to figure out what went wrong. They never suspected that one human had caused it all. Across the galaxy, Lieutenant Mira Song was making her own kind of trouble. Mira had been a pilot in Earth's Space Force before the invasion. Now she was forced to fly cargo ships between Vorthak facilities. But the aliens had made a serious mistake by putting a human behind the controls of their spacecraft. Vorthak ships were designed to be flown by minds that followed predictable patterns. Their navigation systems assumed pilots would always take the most logical route. Their weapons targeting expected enemies to behave in calculated ways. But human pilots didn't think like that. Mira had learned to fly in ways that confused Vorthak computers. She would make sudden direction changes that seemed random but were actually carefully planned. She would use gravitational fields and asteroid belts in ways the original ship designers never imagined. When Vorthak patrol ships tried to stop suspicious cargo vessels, they found themselves chasing ghosts. Human pilots would disappear into space phenomena that should have been impossible to navigate. They would emerge in completely unexpected locations, making the advanced Vorthak sensors look foolish. The aliens began reporting technical problems with their tracking systems. They upgraded their computers and trained new pilots, but the mysterious malfunctions continued. They never realized they were fighting an entirely different kind of intelligence. Meanwhile, deep in the forests of a slave world called Kepler-7, Colonel Yoon-ji Han was meeting with representatives from 12 different species. Most of them were considered low value by the Vorthak ranking system, but Yoon-ji had learned they were far more capable than anyone suspected. The meeting took place in a cave hidden beneath the roots of massive trees. Yoon-ji sat in a circle with aliens who looked like bears, lizards, birds, and stranger things. All of them had been pretending to be primitive and harmless for decades. Elder Wiseclaw of the Kethron spoke first. His furry face looked serious in the dim light. "We have studied the Tall Ones for 300 years. We know their weaknesses, their fears, their blind spots, but we were never strong enough to act alone." A scaled alien named Thresh from the Mokari species nodded agreement. The Tall Ones think in straight lines. They cannot imagine enemies who think in circles and spirals and unexpected directions. Humans think in all directions, added a bird-like Quilith named Sharpsong. Your minds are chaos to them. Useful chaos. Yoon-ji looked around the circle. "What are you proposing?" "War," said Elder Wiseclaw simply. But not the kind they expect. Not armies and battleships, war in shadows and whispers and small cuts that seem like accidents. Over the following weeks, the Alliance began its hidden campaign. Makari workers who maintained life support systems started making tiny adjustments that caused random failures. Quilith data managers began corrupting files in ways that looked like computer errors. Kethern miners accidentally damaged important equipment. Each problem was small and seemed unrelated to the others. But together they created chaos across multiple Vorthak facilities. The aliens found themselves dealing with constant minor crises that slowed their operations and frustrated their commanders. The best part was that humans appeared to be just as affected as everyone else. When life support failed, humans suffered along with other species. When equipment broke down, humans had to work harder to fix it. The Vorthak never suspected that their lowest-ranked slaves were actually coordinating the sabotage. Back in space, Captain Hyunwoo Kim was finally getting his chance for revenge. He had been transferred to a Vorthak command ship as part of a prisoner work detail. His job was to clean and maintain the ship's interior while the aliens planned military operations. But Hyunwoo wasn't just cleaning. He was planting tiny devices that Dr. Sung-ho had designed. Each device was smaller than a human fingernail and looked exactly like a normal maintenance component. The Vorthak sensors couldn't tell the difference. The devices were actually quantum viruses that would slowly spread through the ship's computer network. They wouldn't cause immediate damage, but they would create small errors in calculations and communications. Navigation would become slightly less accurate. Weapons targeting would develop tiny delays. Shield coordination would become just a bit unreliable. Hyunwoo installed dozens of the devices over several weeks. Each one was hidden in a different system, spread throughout the massive ship. The viruses were designed to activate at random times, making it impossible to trace their source. The first signs of trouble appeared during a routine patrol mission. The ship's main gun fired 3 seconds late during a target practice. Navigation computers reported a position that was off by several kilometers. Communications with other ships experienced brief static bursts. The Vorthak engineering teams checked everything twice and found no problems. All systems appeared to be working normally. They blamed the incidents on space radiation and cosmic interference. But the problems continued. During the next month, the command ship experienced 17 minor technical difficulties. Each incident was small and seemed explainable, but they were happening more and more often. Other Vorthak ships in the fleet began reporting similar issues. Weapon systems that fired late. Navigation errors that sent ships slightly off course. Communication delays that lasted just a few seconds. The fleet commander, a massive Vorthak named War Leader Gorth, called a meeting of his technical staff. "These malfunctions are becoming a pattern," he announced. "Find the cause and fix it." But his engineers couldn't find anything wrong. All their scans showed normal operation. Their computer diagnostics reported no errors. The problems seemed to be random and impossible to predict. What they didn't understand was that they were fighting a war they couldn't see. Human ingenuity was attacking them through methods they never imagined. Flexible thinking was defeating superior technology. Adaptation was overcoming brute force. The hidden war had begun, and the Alpha species didn't even know they were under attack. In facilities across the galaxy, humans continued their double lives. They worked as slaves during the day and saboteurs at night. They followed orders while secretly building resistance networks. They appeared weak and defeated while actually growing stronger and more organized. The Vorthak still saw humans as Omega-class failures. They still believed their own superiority was unquestionable. They still thought the galaxy belonged to them by right of strength. But small cracks were appearing in their perfect empire. Tiny problems that seemed like coincidences. Random failures that looked like bad luck. The alpha predators were starting to become prey, and they didn't even realize the hunt had begun. Supreme Commander Insu Kang stood in the hidden command center deep beneath the surface of Kepler-7 and watched data streams from across the galaxy. For 15 years he had been planning this moment. Now it was finally time to show the Vorthak what humans really were. Insu had been Earth's top military strategist before the invasion. The Vorthak thought he was dead, killed during the final battle for Sol. Instead, he had been secretly rescued by the early resistance and had spent the last decade and a half building the largest underground network in galactic history. The command center was carved from solid rock and shielded from all Vorthak sensors. Computer screens showed the locations of human agents on thousands of worlds. Communication arrays connected resistance cells across dozens of star systems. Weapon manufacturing stations produced devices that combined human creativity with stolen alien technology. Report, Insu said to his staff. Tech specialist Bo-Ram Shin looked up from her console. At 24, she was the youngest person in the room, but also the most dangerous. Her specialty was cyber warfare using methods that no alien species had ever imagined. All networks are ready, Bo-Ram reported. We have agents in position on every major Vorthak facility. Our virus systems have infected 60% of their fleet computers. The Alliance species are standing by for coordinated action. General Dong-Hyun Lim nodded from his strategy station. Military preparations are complete. We have weapons stockpiles hidden on 43 worlds. Our pilots are ready with modified ships. The Kethron, Mokari, and Quileth forces are waiting for the signal. Insu studied the galaxy map floating in the center of the room. Red dots showed Vorthak strongholds. Blue dots showed human-resistant cells. Green dots showed allied species. For the first time in 15 years, the blue and green dots outnumbered the red. Begin Phase 1, Insu ordered. Across the galaxy, tech specialist Bo-Ram's cyber attack began. But this wasn't like anything the Vorthak had seen before. Instead of trying to break into their systems, the human viruses made those systems work exactly as designed, but with new programming. Vorthak weapons turned on other Vorthak weapons. Navigation computers started sending ships to the wrong locations. Communication networks began broadcasting human messages instead of alien orders. Life support systems shut down in military areas while staying active in prisoner sections. The beauty of the attack was that everything still looked normal to Vorthak sensors. Their computers showed green lights and positive readings. But reality no longer matched what their instruments were telling them. On the command ship where Captain Hyun-Woo Kim had planted quantum viruses months earlier, chaos erupted in minutes. The main weapons array suddenly rotated and fired on the ship's own escort vessels. The navigation system sent them flying directly into an asteroid field. Communications started broadcasting old Earth music at full volume. War leader Gorth roared in fury as his bridge erupted in sparks and warning alarms. "What is happening?" he demanded. His technical officer checked every system twice. "All systems show normal operation, War leader. I cannot explain these malfunctions, but these weren't malfunctions. They were human ingenuity using Vorthak technology better than the Vorthak themselves." Lieutenant Mira Song led the first wave of the space attack. She commanded a fleet of small ships that had been secretly modified by human engineers. Each vessel looked like a normal cargo transport, but hidden weapons and engines made them as dangerous as Vorthak warships. The key to the human attack was unpredictability. Vorthak battle computers expected enemies to follow logical patterns. When Mira's ships began moving in seemingly random directions, the alien targeting systems couldn't keep up. Human pilots used asteroid belts as weapons, pushing large rocks into Vorthak formation patterns. They flew through gas clouds that should have been impossible to navigate. Emerging behind enemy lines, they used gravitational slingshots to achieve speeds that their ships weren't designed for. The Vorthak found themselves fighting ghosts that appeared and disappeared without warning. Their superior firepower meant nothing when they couldn't hit their targets. On Vorthak Prime, the species' homeworld, the High Council was meeting an emergency session. The massive aliens sat around a table made from a single crystal, their red eyes glowing with anger and confusion. 17 facilities have gone dark in the last day, reported Intelligence Prime Vexthan. We are seeing coordinated system failures across multiple sectors. This cannot be coincidence. What enemy could do this? Asked Military Prime Korthaval. We have defeated every species in the galaxy. We know all potential threats. The patterns suggest internal sabotage, said Technical Prime Zalketh. But our security scans show no signs of rebellion. All slave species are accounted for and under control. Supreme Prime Yothkar, the largest and oldest of the Vorthak, spoke slowly. Perhaps we have missed something. What species have we dismissed as harmless? The Council reviewed files of all conquered races. Dozens of species were listed as minimal threat or no military value. The humans were at the bottom of the list, ranked as Omega class, useful only for basic labor. The humans, Vexthan said thoughtfully. They have been slaves for 15 years. No rebellions, no escape attempts, no signs of organization. But they are present at almost every facility that has experienced problems. Impossible, Korthval replied. Humans are weak, primitive, and easily controlled. Our mind dominance works perfectly on them. But Supreme Prime Yothkar was old enough to be careful. Send inspection teams to human work areas. Look for anything unusual. The inspection teams found nothing. Human workers were doing their jobs exactly as ordered. They showed proper fear and obedience. Their quarters contained no weapons or contraband. They appeared to be model slaves. What the inspectors didn't see were the tiny hand signals humans use to coordinate activities, the coded messages hidden in work schedules, the weapons that looked exactly like normal tools, the communication devices that appeared to be broken electronics. Humans had learned to hide in plain sight. After 15 years of slavery, they knew exactly what the Vorthak expected to see. They gave the aliens exactly that, while secretly building something completely different underneath. Meanwhile, the alliance of lesser species was revealing its true nature. The furry Kethron emerged from their forests with advanced weapons they had been hiding for centuries. The scaled Mokari showed that their primitive mining tools were actually sophisticated engineering devices. The bird-like Quilith demonstrated that their simple communication calls could coordinate complex military operations across vast distances. But the humans remained the coordinators, not the leaders. This was crucial to the plan. If the Vorthak saw humans commanding alien armies, they would realize how badly they had misjudged human capabilities. Instead, it looked like various species were spontaneously rebelling at the same time. Dr. So Young Park, now working with General Dong-Hyun Lim's research team, had made the most important discovery of all. Vorthak mind control worked by instilling fear, and then exploiting that fear to create mental paralysis. But human minds could learn to resist by changing their emotional responses. Fear is what they use to control, So Young explained to a group of resistance leaders. But humans can learn to feel other emotions even when afraid. Anger, hope, determination, love. These create different brain patterns that break their control. This discovery led to the development of mental resistance training. Humans learned to think about their families, their dreams, their desire for freedom whenever Vorthak tried to dominate their minds. The aliens found that their most reliable tool was becoming less and less effective. On Facility Omega-7, the same place where Hyunwoo had first been imprisoned, the uprising began at exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time. Every human worker stood up simultaneously and looked directly at their Vorthak guards. For the first time in 15 years, the humans were not afraid. The guards tried to use their mind control, pushing waves of terror and pain toward the slaves, but the humans just stood there, thinking about Earth and freedom and the people they loved. The mental attacks that had worked for thousands of years simply bounced off. "Impossible," whispered one guard. "Not impossible," replied a human worker named Ji-Ho, the same man who had given Hyunwoo hope so long ago. Just unexpected, the humans moved forward. Not running, not attacking wildly, but walking with calm purpose. They had been planning this moment for 15 years. They knew exactly what to do. In the facility's control room, human saboteurs activated devices that turned the base's own security systems against the Vorthak. Doors locked the aliens into small sections while opening pathways for the prisoners. Weapon arrays rotated to target guard positions. Life support shut down in military areas. The Vorthak tried to call for help, but their communications were broadcasting human voices instead of alien commands. They tried to access their weapons, but the computers no longer recognized their authorization codes. Everything that had made them powerful was now working against them. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. The alpha species that had ruled for 3,000 years suddenly found themselves trapped and helpless, surrounded by the weak slaves they had tormented for so long, but the humans didn't kill them. Fleet Admiral Hee-Jin Moon stood on the bridge of humanity's first true warship and watched the Vorthak homeworld grow larger on the main screen. Around her, a massive fleet of ships from dozens of species moved through space in perfect formation. After 15 years of slavery and 5 years of hidden war, this was humanity's final answer to those who called themselves Alpha. Ye-Jin had been a young naval officer when Earth fell. She remembered watching her home burn from orbit as the last human ships were destroyed. Now she commanded the largest alliance fleet in galactic history, and every species that had ever been crushed by Vorthak arrogance was here for the final battle. "Status report," she ordered. Captain Hyunwoo Kim, now her second in command, checked the tactical displays. "All alliance ships are in position. The Kethran assault groups are ready. Mokari engineering teams have confirmed their target coordinates. Human infiltration units report successful placement of disruption devices." "What about the weapon?" Hyejin asked. Dr. Kyung-suk Ryu looked up from her science station. She was older now, her hair gray from years of working in secret laboratories, but her eyes were bright with the fire of discovery. "The genetic disruptor is ready. One shot will remove their psychic abilities permanently. They will become just another species." The weapon had taken 3 years to develop. Dr. Ryu and her team had studied captured Vorthak DNA until they understood exactly what made the aliens so dangerous. Their psychic abilities came from specialized brain structures that could be neutralized without killing them. It was the perfect human solution. Instead of destroying their enemies, they would simply make them equal. "Incoming transmission from the planet," Communications Officer Boram Shin reported. "It's Supreme Prime Yothkar himself." The main screen shifted to show the massive form of the Vorthak leader. His red eyes blazed with fury and something humans had never seen in a Vorthak before. "Fear. Unknown ships, you will withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Yothkar's mind voice echoed through the bridge. "We are the Alpha species. We do not negotiate with slaves." Hyejin stepped forward so the alien could see her clearly. "I am Fleet Admiral Hyejin Moon of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. We are here to end your reign of terror. Surrender now and your people will not be harmed." "Impossible," Yothkar roared. "Humans are Omega class. You cannot threaten us." "Your classification system was always wrong," Hyejin replied calmly. "You measured species by your own standards: strength, aggression, psychic power. You never understood that intelligence comes in many forms." On the planet below, massive defense systems began powering up. Planet crackers that could shatter moons emerged from hidden silos. Reality-warping weapons that could tear holes in space itself rotated toward the fleet. The Vorthak were preparing to use their most devastating technology, but they had forgotten something important. For 5 years, humans had been infiltrating their facilities and studying their weapons. Every defense system on the planet had human-designed viruses hidden in its programming. "Now," Hyejin ordered. Tech specialist Boram activated the final phase of humanity's cyber war. Across the planet, Vorthak weapons turned on themselves. Planet crackers fired into the ground instead of into space. Reality warpers created tiny, harmless distortions that did nothing but waste energy. Defense shields flickered on and off in random patterns. The aliens had built the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. But humans had learned to use it better than its creators. Supreme Prime Yothkar watched his defenses crumble and felt something Vorthak had not experienced in 3,000 years. Desperation. "How is this possible? Our systems are perfect." "Your systems are excellent," General Dong-hyun Lim's voice came through the communication link. He was leading ground forces that had already secured key positions on the planet. But they were designed by minds that think in straight lines. Human minds think in spirals and curves and directions you never imagined. The final assault began, but it was unlike any battle in galactic history. Instead of destroying Vorthak cities, the Alliance forces surrounded them and cut off their power. Instead of killing alien soldiers, they used advanced stun weapons to capture them alive. Instead of conquest, it was liberation. The fighting was brief because the Vorthak had built their entire military around psychological dominance. When that failed, they had no backup plans. They had never needed to learn how to fight as equals because they had always been superior. But now they were facing species that had spent generations learning to fight from positions of weakness. The Alliance knew how to be creative, flexible, and unexpected because they had never had the luxury of overwhelming power. In the Imperial Palace at the planet's center, Supreme Prime Yothkar made his last stand. The enormous alien stood in his throne room, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen guards. His massive form still radiated menace, but his red eyes showed confusion and growing terror. Captain Hyunwoo Kim entered the throne room with a small team of human soldiers. He had come full circle from the terrified prisoner, who had once cleaned floors on a slave ship, to the military officer who would accept the surrender of the Alpha species. "It's over," Hyunwoo said simply. "Your empire is finished. Your fleets are captured. Your worlds are free. You cannot defeat us, Yothkar said, but his voice lacked its former confidence. We are the strongest species in the galaxy. We have ruled for 3,000 years. Strength isn't everything, replied Dr. So-Young Park as she entered behind Hyunwoo. She carried a small device that hummed with quiet energy. Intelligence matters more. Adaptability matters more. The ability to work together matters most of all. She activated the device. A wave of energy washed over Yothkar, and for the first time in his life, the Supreme Prime felt his psychic abilities fade away. The power that had made his species rulers became nothing more than a memory. What have you done? He whispered. We've made you equal, So-Young replied. No more Alpha, no more Omega. Just another species in a galaxy where everyone has value. The effect spread across the planet as more devices activated. Every Vorthak felt their mental dominance disappear. They remained intelligent and physically strong, but they could no longer control other minds through fear and intimidation. For the first time in millennia, they would have to earn respect instead of taking it by force. Supreme Prime Yothkar, now just Yothkar, sank to his knees as the weight of what had happened hit him. How did you do it? How did the weakest species in the galaxy defeat us? Hyunwoo looked at the fallen leader with something that wasn't hatred or anger, but pity. You never understood what humans really are. You saw our physical weakness and assumed that was all we had. You missed our curiosity, our creativity, our ability to learn from others. You taught us your own technology, added So-Young. You forced us to study your methods. You gave us 15 years to understand your weaknesses while hiding our strengths. But most importantly, said Dr. Shung-Ho Jang as he joined them in the throne room, you never realized that being underestimated is the greatest advantage any species can have. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Fleet Admiral Hai-Jin Moon stood in the former Imperial Council chamber, now filled with representatives from dozens of species. The old hierarchy was gone. In its place, they were building something new. The Galactic Liberation Alliance will become the Galactic Cooperation Council, she announced. Every species will have a voice. Every world will choose its own government. No one will ever again be classified as Alpha or Omega. Elder Wise Claw of the Kethran raised a furry paw. What about the former rulers? What happens to the Vorthak? They will be invited to join the council as equals, replied Supreme Commander Insu Kang. They have knowledge and abilities that could benefit everyone if they're willing to share instead of dominate. Some humans wanted revenge. After 15 years of slavery and abuse, the desire for payback was understandable. But the human leaders knew that revenge would only create new cycles of hatred and violence. Instead, they chose the most human response possible. They chose to forgive and build something better. Years later, Admiral Hyunwoo Kim, now retired, sat in a garden on New Earth and watched children from a dozen different species playing together. Some were human, others were former slaves like the Kethran and Mokari, and a few were even young Vorthak, learning to live in a world where cooperation mattered more than domination. A reporter from the Galactic News Network approached him for an interview. Admiral, people still ask how humanity was able to defeat the most powerful empire in galactic history. What would you tell them? Hyunwoo smiled as he watched a human child help a fallen Vorthak youngster back to his feet. I'd tell them that we never defeated anyone. We just showed the galaxy that there was a better way to live. The Vorthak called themselves Alpha because they thought strength made them superior. But they forgot that every species has something valuable to offer. Our job wasn't to replace them at the top of some hierarchy. Our job was to tear down the hierarchy itself. Humans aren't special because we're stronger or smarter or more advanced than anyone else. We're special because we believe that everyone deserves respect, everyone can contribute something useful, and everyone is worth saving.